Hi, boys and girls. In this video lecture, we will learn more about the main cell types that constitute both the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Well, as we already know, in both systems, the main constituent of the systems are the neurons. So neurons are the most predominant cells in the nervous system. But apart from the neurons, we also have other types of cells that these cells they are more responsible for giving support for the nervous system. Okay, so we have neuron cells, which makes up approximately 80% of the total cells, and the rest of 20% approximately we have non-neuron cells. Okay, so let's start with the neurons. The neuron has this structure. Okay, so it's basically composed by a cell body in which contains the nucleus and the main organelles, okay, of the cell. It has dendrites that are those projections here that are stimulated by environmental changes or electrical impulses from other cells. Then we have this long arm here, which is called axon. Okay, so the axon conducts the nerve impulses to another cell. Okay, and through the terminal buttons or axon terminals here. Okay, so those will connect with another neuron. Okay, so basically the action potential, they travel from the cell body through the axon to reach another cell. Okay, so this is the basic structure of a neuron. The neurons, they can be classified according to their structure and according to their function. Okay, so according to their structure, there are basically three main types of neurons. Okay, unipolar, bipolar, and multipolar. But I could also mention that there is also another classification which is called anaxonal. Okay, and this anaxonic type we will not go into further details because it's anaxonal because it's a neuron that lacks the axon, and it's very like specific to the central nervous system, to some areas related with the senses. So this type of neurons without the an axon, their function are still not well understood. Okay, so let's focus on these three different types here. So we have basically unipolar, bipolar, and multipolar. Okay, according to their structure, and according to their function, there are sensory neurons, motor neurons, and interneurons. Okay. So the structural classification is based on basically on the location of the cell body. As you see here, this is the cell body, cell body, cell body. Okay, so it's according to the location of the cell body and also according to the number of dendritic terminals. Okay, so the first one here, the unipolar, it has dendrites and one axon that are fused together to form a continuous processes that emerge from the cell body. So this is all, everything is fused together here and it forms a continuous process. Okay, so the unipolar is very specific in sensorial receptors. Okay, so those are axonal neurons that are more present related with the senses. senses, no, sorry, with sensorial receptors, including pain, temperature, touch. Okay, so unipolar is more related with sensory receptors. So those neurons here, they connect the receptors located in the skin, in the muscle, for example, to the central nervous system in the spinal cord. Okay, so those are sensory neurons, basically, the unipolar type. Okay, the bipolar is this one here that has one main dendrite and one axon. Okay, and the cell body is located right in the middle. They are more precisely found in the retina of the inner of the eye, in the retina, the inner ear, the olfactory area of the brain. So those this type here, bipolar, is more related with the senses. Okay, like smell, sight, taste. Okay, those are the vestibular system as well in the inner ear. So the bipolar is more related with the transmission of special senses. Whereas the multipolar has multiple dendrites, as you see here, in the cell body, okay, emerging from the cell body, and has one axon, okay. And this is the predominant type found in the brain, in the spinal cord. So multipolar, like the vast majority of neurons that we have, they are multipolar, okay, and they are found in the as motor neurons as well as effector neurons in the central nervous system. And according to their functional classification, they can be classified in sensory neurons that are afferent neurons. Most of them, they are unipolar, as I mentioned before. The motor neurons are called efferent neurons, and most of them are multipolar. Okay, so afferent comes from the skin or the muscle. Okay, and then it goes to the dorsal horn of the spinal cord here. Okay, so this is afferent or sensory. Then here, right in the middle, we have interneurons. So they are association neurons that they make the connection between the dorsal horn and the anterior horn of the spinal cord. Okay, so interneurons, most of them, they are multipolar as well. Okay, as the efferent neurons or motor neurons that they emerge from the anterior horn of the spinal cord towards the effectors or the muscles. Okay. So neurons are the most predominant type, okay, of cells. But we also have non-neuronal cells in the central nervous system and in the peripheral nervous system. So these non-neuronal cells, they are called neuroglia. Okay, neuroglia. There are different types of neuroglia. So in the central nervous system, we have ependymal cells, oligodendrocytes, astrocytes, and microglia. Whereas in the peripheral nervous system, we have satellite cells and Schwann cells. So this is the picture that we have, first of all, in the central nervous system. So this here, as you see, this is the spinal cord, okay, in a transverse section of the spinal cord, in which we can see gray matter here in the middle, okay, and white matter in the periphery. So gray matter, this layer, and this is white matter. And right here in the center, in this, we have the central canal. Sorry, the central canal. So I want to call your attention how those cells organized in the central nervous system. So we have ependymal cells. They are lining here the central canal. Okay. We have astrocytes here, making the connection between a blood vessel and a neuron. Okay. We have microglial cells, mostly responsible for the defense of the central nervous system. And we also have oligodendrocytes, which you see here that they are supporting and also providing coating for the neurons, coating with myelin. Okay, so let's go through each of them. The ependymal cells, they are simple columnar ciliated neuroepithelium. They line up all the ventricular cavities and also the central canal in the spinal cord. They are responsible for forming the choroid plexus, okay, which will help in the production of cerebrospinal fluid, okay, which is made up um, by the filtration of blood, okay, in the blood-brain barrier. And these ependymal cells also have cilia that assist on the circulation of cerebrospinal fluid. Okay, so this is an example here in the fluid-filled cavity, which could be the ventricle or could be the central canal. Well, yeah, sorry. The astrocytes. The astrocytes is a very is the most abundant uh, neuroglia type. Okay, in the central nervous system. The astrocytes they have this name because they are star-shaped cells. So the shape of a star. So it's like astrocytes. They provide structural support to neurons, as you see here, and also connect neurons with the capillaries, okay, in the central nervous system. So according to that, we can assume that astrocytes, they are responsible for modulating the communication between neurons and blood vessels. They are also responsible for providing nutrients from the blood vessel to the neuron, okay? Nutrients including oxygen, organic nutrients, glucose, and ions, amino acids. And apart from that, from these nutrients, they also support they kind of support the myelin in the coverage of neurons here. Okay, so they have those specific functions, regulating the chemical environment for generating the nerve impulses. Okay, so the nerve impulses, they come always from the cell body, and for a for an electrical impulse to run, to propagate from the cell body to the axon, it needs support, it needs nutrients, okay, and also communication. So this is the function of the astrocyte. Then we have oligodendrocytes. Oligodendrocytes, they are these cells that coat, provide coating in the central nervous system, coating myelin. So myelin is mainly composed by fat. Okay, so approximately 80% is fat, and provides insulation to the neurons. Okay, so oligodendrocytes, they will produce the myelin sheath in the central nervous system, and will also provide a structural framework in the central nervous system. As you see here, the oligodendrocytes, so this is one oligodendrocyte. So one oligodendrocyte can be responsible for making this structural framework, like connecting up to 50 different neurons. Okay, so one oligodendrocyte can connect up to 50 different neurons here in the central nervous system. this cell here, oligodendrocytes, they can be comparable to Schwann cells in the peripheral nervous system. But the difference is that the Schwann cells in the peripheral nervous system will have only one Schwann cell providing myelin coating to the neurons in the peripheral nervous system. Whereas the oligodendrocytes, they can support, they can give this structural framework to more than one cell. Okay, so this is the main difference. And finally, we have the microglia, which constitute the smallest and least abundant cells in the central nervous system, neuroglia. They account for approximately 10 to 15% of the neuroglia. They are responsible for maintaining the homeostasis, so the equilibrium of ions as well in the external environment of the central nervous system. They protect the central nervous system cells from disease by engulfing invading microbes. So they have this function of phagocytosis, okay, the microglia. And they migrate to areas of injured tissue, nerve tissue, where they clear away the cell debris and dead cells by phagocytosis. Okay, so these are the cells that fight against any injury that can occur in the central nervous system. Whereas in the peripheral nervous system, we have basically two different types of neuroglia in the peripheral nervous system. The Schwann cells, which you can see here, and the satellite cells here. So this is a peripheral nerve, okay? And this is a ganglion, okay, a cell body of a neuron. We have ganglia in our peripheral nervous system. So the first type here, Schwann cells, they surround all axons in the peripheral nervous system, okay? And they are responsible for myelination of the peripheral axons. And they can also participate in the repair process after injury. So the Schwann cells, as you see here, there are two types of peripheral axons. We can have myelinated axons and unmyelinated axons. So it's worthy to mention that Schwann cells, they not necessarily produce myelin, okay, in the peripheral nervous system. So some Schwann cells, they can be present in myelinated axons, such as this example here. This is a myelinated axon, and we have Schwann cells surrounding it, okay, and giving support. And we also have this example of an unmyelinated axon, okay, so there is no myelin here, and we have Schwann cells here, like making this support in the peripheral nervous system. This function of participating in the repair process after injury, this is very specific of the peripheral nervous system, okay? So you have already heard about neuron regeneration. So neurons in the central nervous system, they don't have this ability to regenerate, okay, because of the oligodendrocytes. They are the equivalent cell types in the central nervous system. So the oligodendrocytes, they produce like a factor that inhibits neuronal growth in the central nervous system. But in the peripheral nervous system, we have the Schwann cells. And Schwann cells, they have the ability of regenerating, okay, as long as the cell body is not affected. Okay, so for example, we have in a in a car accident, or in which you can have an injury to the brachial plexus, for example. So the brachial plexus is in the peripheral nervous system, and this is not. And when you have an injury like an avulsion, I will give an example of the motorcycle. Someone is riding a motorcycle, and if someone falls from a motorcycle with the arms extended, so this will induce avulsion. So this will induce like an overextension of the arm, and this could cause an injury to the brachial plexus here by overstretching the brachial plexus. And when this is overstretched, it can cause injury then. So if the injury is here in the axon in the peripheral nervous system has the ability of regeneration, okay? But if the injury is in the cell body, it's very unlikely to regenerate, because the cell body is the area which has the nucleus, and if there is an injury here, the cell dies eventually, okay? And this other type of cells, finally, the satellite cells, are small cells that surround the neurons here. Mostly they surround the cell body, okay? So this is the cell body. This picture here, the cell body is also, we'll see like in the peripheral nervous system, they constitute the ganglia, okay? The neuron cell bodies in sensory, sympathetic, and parasympathetic ganglia. So this is a ganglion. Okay, so we have many ganglia in the peripheral nervous system, and the satellite cells will surround this ganglia. They support neurons. Okay, here. And they also regulate exchange of materials between neurons and the interstitial fluid. So exchange of materials, including ions, nutrients, oxygen, carbon dioxide. Okay, so this is the main function of satellite cells. They provide additional support to the peripheral nervous system. So that's it for now. Those are the main cells that constitute the neuroglia. And I hope to see you soon.